In the heart of Mbale, Uganda, the air was filled with laughter, music, and the bright colours of birthday balloons. Inside a beautiful, well-decorated home, Amira smiled softly. It was her 35th birthday. She had spent the whole day waiting for her husband Jabari to surprise her. Maybe a dinner, maybe flowers. Instead, he walked in, cold and proud, holding a small white envelope. "Happy birthday," he said, his voice flat. "You're free now." Confused, Amira opened it with shaking hands. Inside were divorce papers. Her heart paused for a moment. The man she had loved, supported, and sacrificed so much for had given her this as a birthday gift. Jabari stood tall, a cruel smirk on his face, expecting her to cry, to beg. But Amira didn't cry. She didn't ask why. She simply looked at the papers, then looked up at him, smiled gently, and said, "Thank you." Then she turned and walked away, leaving him in silence. Jabari thought he had won. He thought he had broken her. But he had no idea. This wasn't the end for Amira. It was just the beginning of something he would never see coming. Amira held the divorce papers in her hand. The room was silent, except for the soft sound of music still playing in the background. Colourful balloons floated around her, and a cake with her name sat untouched on the table. She looked up at Jabari, who stood proudly in front of her, arms folded, waiting to see her break down. But instead of crying, shouting, or asking why, Amira simply smiled, a calm, soft smile. She looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Thank you." Then she placed the envelope gently on the table and walked away. Jabari burst into laughter. "Wow," he said to himself, shaking his head. "That was easier than I thought." He believed he had won, that she was too weak to fight back, that his plan to humiliate her had worked perfectly. He thought she would be lost without him. But Jabari didn't know the truth. Amira had found out about his affair months ago. She had seen the messages, the hotel receipts, the late nights that he blamed on work. And she had said nothing. She had smiled at him every day, cooked for him, even kissed him goodbye before he left for his so-called business meetings. But while he was busy lying and cheating, Amira was quietly making her own plans. For 3 months, she had been getting ready. No drama, no warnings, no tears, just silence. She had opened a secret bank account. She had spoken to a lawyer. She had copied every message, every email, and recorded every cruel thing he ever said to her. She had even reached out to one of his mistresses, not to fight, not to argue, but to talk. And surprisingly, the woman listened. And then she helped. Every time Jabari laughed behind her back, Amira was taking one step closer to freedom. He thought she was just a simple, quiet wife. He didn't know that she had already started to build a life without him. He didn't know that behind her gentle smile was a fire he could never control. He thought she didn't know, but she knew everything. She had watched him destroy their marriage slowly with lies and disrespect, and she had made a decision. She would leave, but on her terms. That night, after she walked away, she didn't cry. She didn't even look back. She sat in her room, looked at herself in the mirror, and whispered, "You've got this." Then she picked up her phone and sent one short message. "It's time." The reply came almost instantly. "Ready when you are." She packed a small bag, just the basics. She had already moved most of her important things weeks ago. Jabari had been too busy to notice. As she walked past him again, he was still smiling, proud of himself. She nodded politely, then walked out the door into the night, calm and steady. To him, it looked like the end of a quiet woman's story. But in truth, it was the beginning of something powerful, something unstoppable. While Jabari celebrated his little victory, Amira was setting things in motion that would turn his world upside down. Years ago, when Amira first started making small jars of organic shea butter in her kitchen, it was just something to keep her busy. She would mix the natural ingredients by hand, pour them into simple containers, and sell them online through social media. It wasn't much at first, just a few friends and neighbours who supported her. But she loved it. Creating something with her own hands gave her peace. It gave her purpose. But when Jabari saw what she was doing, he laughed. "This is just a housewife's hobby," he said. "You'll never make real money rubbing cream into jars." His words stung. But Amira didn't stop. She just smiled and kept working. She kept learning, watching online tutorials, and improving her product. She started packaging them better, branding her business with a name, a logo, and a story. Slowly, her small business began to grow. Customers from outside Mbali started placing orders. She partnered with local markets. She started using better ingredients, offering more products like body oils, soaps, and scrubs. What Jabari didn't know was that behind every product was a plan. Amira wasn't just trying to make pocket money. She was building something of her own, quietly, carefully. While Jabari was out spending money on fancy clothes and chasing women, Amira was saving. Every shilling she made from her business went into a separate account, one he didn't know about. She never told him how well the business was doing. She never shared the numbers. Every time he mocked her, called her just a housewife, she smiled and thanked him, because the less he knew, the more she could grow in peace. And grow she did. Her business became one of the most trusted natural skincare brands in eastern Uganda. She got featured in small business magazines. Influencers began promoting her products. She even got a contract to supply hotels and spas. The money rolled in, and she never stopped. One day, a close friend who worked in real estate gave her advice. Invest, Amira. Buy something. Don't just save. So she did. Quietly, through legal help and smart paperwork, she bought 40% of the house they lived in, without Jabari ever knowing. She did it under her own name, using the money she earned from the business he once laughed at. On paper, it was clean and official, but in Jabari's mind, he still believed he owned everything. He never once asked her how she paid for things. He just assumed she used his money. Jabari loved showing off the house to his friends. He would brag about how hard he worked to give his wife a good life, not knowing that part of that luxury came from her hustle, not his. When guests visited, he would say, "My wife just plays around with butter and oils," and they would all laugh. Meanwhile, that same play had turned into a million-shilling business with loyal customers and a growing team. She had 2 full-time staff members and paid their salaries proudly. She had built something strong, brick by brick, in silence. Amira never corrected him. She didn't argue. She just kept working, saving, building. Every insult he threw at her became fuel. Every time he ignored her business, she thanked God, because the less he paid attention, the safer her freedom was becoming. He didn't realize that the woman he thought was quiet and weak had already placed herself in a position of power. She no longer depended on him. She didn't need him. She had her own income, her own investments, her own future. So when he handed her those divorce papers on her birthday and said, "You're free now," he truly believed he was the one in control. But he had no idea that she was far ahead of him. He had forgotten to ask the right questions. He had forgotten to notice her strength. He had forgotten the account that wasn't in his name, the account that had changed everything. And now, as Amira quietly prepared her next steps, she smiled to herself, not with revenge in her heart, but with peace, because the life she had dreamed of was no longer a dream. It was real. She had created it with her own hands, her own strength, and her own vision. And no one, not even the man who thought he owned her, could take that away. One week after Amira's birthday, Jabari sat at the dining table, drinking his morning tea like nothing had changed. He still believed he had ended things on his terms. In his head, he was free, and his quiet wife had walked away without a fight. He hadn't heard from her since that night. No calls, no messages. He assumed she was broken somewhere, crying or hiding. He had no idea what was coming. Then a knock came at the door. A man handed him a large envelope marked with a red stamp. It was from a lawyer's office. Confused but still confident, Jabari opened it. His face changed within seconds. The first document inside was a legal notice from Amira. She was filing for asset division. She wasn't just walking away. She was taking her share. And not just any share. She was claiming 40% of the house, part of the land, and even access to shared investments. Jabari's hand trembled slightly as he flipped to the next page. That's when he saw the second blow. She was suing him for emotional abuse. There, attached to the notice, were printouts of text messages, some between him and his mistresses, full of cruel words about Amira. There were screenshots of him insulting her, emails where he mocked her, and even transcripts from recorded conversations where he called her useless and ungrateful. He blinked, confused. How had she gotten all of this? When did she even have the time? Jabari felt the air grow thick around him. His phone slipped from his hand. This wasn't the weak, quiet woman he thought he had married. This was someone who had been watching, collecting, and planning. And then came the twist that shook him to the core. One of the mistresses, someone he had trusted, someone he had lied for and spent money on, had been helping Amira the whole time. She had sent Amira messages he thought were deleted. She had taken screenshots when he wasn't looking. She even wore a hidden recorder once, during a call, feeding Amira everything he said. Why? Because as it turned out, the mistress didn't even like him. She had grown tired of his lies and was disgusted by how he treated Amira. One day, out of guilt and anger, she messaged Amira and said, "You don't deserve this. I want to help." Amira, instead of yelling or blaming her, simply said thank you. She didn't want revenge. She wanted justice. With the help of this woman and her lawyer, she gathered everything she needed quietly, without ever raising her voice. She never threatened Jabari. She never warned him. She just moved silently, wisely, like someone who had already let go of pain and was now protecting her future. Now Jabari sat at the table, no longer proud or smiling. He was sweating, his mind spinning. For the first time, he realized he was the one being left behind. He thought he was in control. He thought he had power. But now, everything was falling apart, and fast. Calls started coming in from mutual friends asking what was going on. Some of his business partners backed away quietly. His image was getting stained, and he had no way to clean it. He tried calling Amira, but she didn't answer. He sent messages. Nothing. He showed up at places she used to go, but she was already gone. The truth hit him hard. Amira hadn't just walked away. She had walked ahead. She had used his arrogance as her shield, his silence as her space, and his disrespect as her motivation. She didn't fight with him because she had no time to waste on a battle. She was building a victory, not seeking revenge. But still, what she delivered to him with that one letter felt like two heavy blows straight to the heart. Asset division and emotional abuse. It wasn't about the money though. It was about truth, about standing up, about showing him that the woman he thought was weak had strength he could never understand. Jabari now had to face lawyers, court dates, and public shame. And through it all, Amira didn't have to raise her voice once. Her silence had been louder than any argument, and her calm had become his storm. Amira stood by the large window of her new apartment in Kampala, the city lights sparkling below like stars scattered on the ground. The luxury apartment was peaceful, clean, and filled with the scent of fresh flowers and soft vanilla candles. It had taken her years of pain, quiet patience, and silent planning to reach this moment. But now, she was here, free, powerful, and at peace. Just a few weeks ago, she had been in Mbali, living in a house where she was ignored, mocked, and treated like she didn't matter. Now, she was in her own space, one she paid for fully from her own hard work. Every pillow, every picture on the wall, every key on her ring, she owned it. This was her new beginning. Not long after settling in Kampala, Amira opened the doors to her new business dream, a physical spa branch for her skincare brand. The shop was beautiful, calm, and full of life, with soothing music, soft lighting, and shelves filled with her organic shea butter, oils, and scrubs. It became a peaceful place for women to come, relax, and feel beautiful. Clients walked in stressed and walked out glowing. Word spread quickly. Her brand, once mocked as a housewife's hobby, was now being praised as one of the top rising beauty businesses in the region. Bookings filled up. Her products sold out. Local celebrities came in. What started in her tiny kitchen had grown into something real, respected, and loved. Then, one morning, she got an email that made her pause and smile. It was from African Women Rise, a well-known media outlet that focused on powerful women changing their stories. They had heard about her brand, her new spa, and the silent storm she had walked through with grace. They wanted to interview her. Amira accepted. On the day of the interview, she wore a beautiful Ankara dress that flowed like water when she walked. Her skin glowed, her eyes were calm, and her voice was steady. She sat across from the interviewer and answered each question with quiet strength. When they asked her about the divorce, the pain, and the turning point in her life, she simply said, "My husband thought he was setting me free, but I'd already freed myself long ago." That one line spread across the internet like wildfire. People reposted it. Women from across Africa sent her messages, saying how inspired they were by her journey. Some shared their own stories of pain, survival, and strength. Others said she had given them courage to finally walk away from their own toxic situations. Amira's story wasn't just a personal victory anymore. It had become a light for others. Back in Mbali, people were talking. Some were shocked. Others were proud. Even those who had once looked down on her now spoke her name with respect. Jabari, now jobless and in trouble with lawyers, couldn't believe what he was seeing. The woman he thought he had broken had become everything he never believed she could be. He saw her face in magazines. He heard her voice in radio interviews. People asked him, "Is that really your ex-wife?" And all he could do was nod. Amira didn't respond to any of his messages. She didn't speak about him in public. She didn't need to. Her life spoke louder than any words ever could. She had made it clear. She wasn't just surviving. She was shining. Every time she opened the spa doors in the morning, every time she walked into her home, every time a woman thanked her for creating safe, healing spaces, Amira knew she had done the right thing. She had taken the pain and turned it into purpose. She had taken silence and turned it into strength. And on her 35th birthday, when Jabari gave her divorce papers thinking he was ending her world, he had no idea he was handing her the final piece she needed to rebuild it better. That birthday didn't break her. It rewrote her entire life. Now, when people ask Amira what changed her, she smiles and says, "Nothing changed me. I just remembered who I was." And every step she takes now is firm, full of grace and power. Because Amira is not just free, she is flying. It was a hot afternoon in Kampala. Outside Amira's spa, Jabari stood, dressed in worn-out clothes, eyes red from crying. He looked nothing like the proud man he used to be. Jobless, ashamed, and alone. He had nowhere else to go. The world he once controlled had turned its back on him. People whispered when they saw him. Former friends ignored his calls. Clients cancelled deals. His name was no longer respected. It was avoided. And now, there he was, outside the very place that once belonged to the woman he thought he had broken. Inside, Amira was finishing up a meeting. Her business was booming. Her team was growing. Her smile was calm. Her heart at peace. She stepped outside in a flowing Ankara dress that danced with the wind. She looked powerful, glowing and untouchable. Then she saw him, Jabari, kneeling, crying, whispering her name, begging for another chance. People passing by paused, watching the scene. But Amira didn't cry. She didn't speak with anger. She simply walked toward the door, paused beside him, looked down gently and said, "Happy birthday, Jabari. Now you're free too." Without another word, she walked inside. The door closed softly behind her. He stayed there, broken, and the world moved on.